Good morning, guys. Sire, your boy, aka the Mancunian, at Psycho Manc. Give me a follow on Twitter if you enjoy. Welcome to Gunner Talk. Just want to start off with something, just to say a massive to so many of you. The other day I've been poking around some ideas of how to take this forward next season. When I ask you guys, to support it, if you're, only if you're enjoying it, don't support it just because you like me or you think I'm a decent guy. If the content's rubbish, don't bother. But I do want to step the content up next year. I would really like, not because I'm only getting lonely, but I would really like for this to be a group dynamic thing. I set this up so I could share my thoughts and sort of answer questions for fellow Gooners, and give them a different opinion on things. So I want to keep that going, but I'd like to be sharing this out amongst the bigger fan base, so I'm getting a wider range of questions from, different fans all over the world. And then I want to get some of you guys on, if I turn it into a podcast next year. I want to get some of you guys on, helping me answer the questions. Let's get more of a general consensus on things, because it's no good just hearing my opinion. So guys, if you are enjoying, please subscribe. I've noticed my numbers have gone up a little bit. I'd love to sort of hit 50 or 100 subscribers before we get to the start of next season. Now, I know that is a massive ask. But please, guys, keep retweeting, keep quoting these when they come out, and, atting people that you think might enjoy it, atting people that you think might want to get involved, whether it's just asking questions or actually helping me answer them. Please, guys, keep doing that, because it's wonderful, and I couldn't love you any more than I do. Well, possibly I could, but at the moment it doesn't feel like it. You're just awesome. God bless you. So let's crack on with Gunner Talk. First and foremost, there's been a lot of bullshit this week, absolute unicorn farts, bits of news. So I want to start with something that's completely factual. Is that Freddie and Bouldy switching roles at the club? No, I didn't really think a lot about it when it first came out. I was like, meh. Does that make a massive difference to things? And then I sort of looked at other people's reactions and had a bit of a think about it myself, and I thought, this is actually quite massive. A lot of you aren't convinced by Bouldy and his abilities, and I think a lot of you saw this as a backwards step for him, and it sort of says a lot about his own personal ambition, that maybe he doesn't have a lot of ambition, that he's willing to take a backwards step. Guys, I don't quite see it like that. Just because he's an Arsenal man and he loves Arsenal, the same as me. If I was offered the chance to go outside of the club or take a different role, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a step down. I'd say it's a bit of shuffling of the pack. Because that managing the under-23s is a big job, and that is going to be a massive part of our future. So I don't see it as a step down for him. I see it as he's an Arsenal man that gets to remain around the club that he loves, doing a still very important role. Maybe not seen to most people as important as being as assistant manager, but definitely still a really important role. So I was okay with that, and I think he'll do pretty well. And I still think Freddie will sort of be a bit of an overseer of it. I think he's become a new middleman now. And this all sort of correlated perfectly with what Vinay said in that second interview, is that, we're going to look internally for solutions before we look externally, because of the way our model's going to run over the next few years. And it's really the only way that our club is going to progress, because we can't compete financially. No matter how many of you say, well, Stan just needs to open his wallet and spend £1 billion on the squad, it can't happen like that, guys. We're going to keep being ran self-sufficiently, and 100% of our revenue comes back in and gets spent on the club. So moving Freddie into this sort of middleman position, and you've sort of got Unai's right-hand Juan, and then you've got his sort of left-hand Lundberg now, and he's got sort of two monkeys on his shoulders. I like this, and I couldn't help but read into it a little bit, and I thought, is this the beginning of Unai as a gap filler? Just come in short term to get us back into Champions League, steady the ship a little bit and do a bit of the dirty work while we sort of groom a successor. And then we've got Freddie just sort of on his shoulder, and if things did go tits up next year, depending on what our realistic goals are, then it's just, we can do a bit like what United have done with shoving Solskjaer in there. Right, we just let Freddie take over as caretaker manager, to the end of the season. If this is very theoretical, if things went badly wrong next year, depending on our goals, and then he could just step in the interim. We see if he's up to it, and if he's not, let's say with Unai's contract, that's only 2 years with a year extension, so that'd be up at the end of next year. So it wouldn't kill us to get rid of him. You know, I'm not against the idea of getting rid of him, but I think it'd be a bit of a knee jerk at the moment. But I sort of saw it like that, and then I sort of took a step back and I thought, well, maybe it is just that he is now a perfect link between Unai and the youth setup. So Unai, I'm sure, has his finger in that pie, and his finger on the pulse when it comes to the youth setup, but obviously not as much as Freddie. So I think he will be looking at Freddie and going, well, in this scenario, who's ready to step up? Who'd be best to play in this position? What am I going to get from this guy? And Freddie can give him, all this talk when he came about his dossier. Freddie might be his personal dossier man, into the under-23s. And we've got a cracking little group of youth players at the moment that we need to utilise, for me. Whether it means playing them, we suffer on the pitch a little bit in the short term to reap the rewards in the long term. I'm all for that, guys. I've already said I'm happy to write off next year. I think this year the goal was get Unai in, Raul, Vinay, the stuff behind the scenes changed, and it was qualify for Champions League, whether it be top 4 or Europa League winning it, and then you get the bonus of the European trophy. But that was his goals. And obviously they haven't happened. So then I think it moves on to a second goal, which is, right, this squad are buckled again. The mainstay of this squad don't have it in them. They're just a bit gutless when it comes down to it. Do they really care? The ones who do care, do they actually have the talent to back that up? We've got a real mishmash of shit at the minute, which causes us big problems for me. And so I'm holding my reservation on Unai. I know a lot of you guys will see it as he didn't land those things, so he's been a failure. For me, I would only start to look at him as a failure is he didn't get those 2 things, but was the season that bad? Well, no, because we got to a final and we were 1 point off landing top 4. So, without certain players fucking him, we should have landed his goals. I don't believe that you can hand on heart say it's all Unai Emery's fault that we haven't won the Europa League or landed top 4. I think that's very harsh on him. So you look at sort of who's let him down, how regularly they're letting him down, and do they now have to leave? And for me, it's yes. Like I say, I just think there's a bad atmosphere around this squad, which I think was created by Arsene, that mediocre's all right. And I mentioned it to somebody the other day, through his attitude of just never lambasting a player. It's always arm round him and he'll be all right, you'll make up for this next week, where I don't buy into that philosophy as a manager. I prefer someone that, I'm like that in my personal life. If you fuck me over, I'm going to let you know you fucked me over, and it's your one chance, you get one chance. Once fool me, fool you, twice fool me, sort of thing. Once bitten, twice shy, and all that sort of thing. So for me, there's some of these guys that have to go. Like I say, the attitude and the atmosphere around the squad, I don't like. It's sort of a loser mentality, and top 4 just seemed to be okay, and we sort of stayed stagnant. And now it's sort of, I don't want to slip into that. Well, just getting back into the top 4 is a massive achievement. I think we should be looking more long term than short term. I think we've been too narrow sighted with our goals and our projections, and it's just been a next year thing. And I think now it's a real time. This hasn't worked out. It's a time to take a step back and go, what are our realistic goals for next year, and what should we realistically believe should be our achievements for next year? And I've took a real step back from it, and I'm pretty happy to write off next year. I don't know what that means for Unai, but I think as a club we shouldn't be looking at getting Champions League next year. I think it's more internal. I think we should be looking at building a squad, and whether it just finishes top half of the table next year, but it's a starting point for something and a bigger picture. And I've been pushing around ideas of a squad, and people haven't liked it. And I sort of said, if you look at what needs to go, not my personal opinion, just what actually needs to leave to get rid of this shitty atmosphere and start afresh, which is what I believe we need to do. You're looking at a squad of sort of Leno, Martinez as goalkeepers. Now they can do us for the next 3 to 5 years. Bellerin at right back, that's it. So you'd need a backup right back. Centre back, Holding, Mavropanos, Bielik. Socrates is there at the minute, but he'll have to go over the next couple of years. So you've got those 3. So you need 2 more centre backs minimum. Left back, everybody seems to want both of those two gone. So there's two left backs. Centre of the park for me, you've only got really Willock, Torreira, Guendouzi, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Emile Smith-Rowe that are worth keeping. That's just my opinion. Chambers as well. Then you look at wingers, Iwobi, or attacking players, because Iwobi's not one for me, but Iwobi, Saka, Nelson, Amici, Eddie, and then Laka, because Aubameyang, as much as you don't like it, isn't going to be here in 3 to 5 years. So that's the nucleus of what we've got to build with, guys. Like I say, whether you like it or not, it's time to put the hat of realism on, because this is going to be our project going forwards. Vinay's let you know that we're going to look internally, and there's going to be a big turnover in this window, or I feel there has to be. You look, there's going to be 10 players leave really. Czech's gone already. Rambo's gone, Welbs has gone, Litchi's gone. There's 4. Then you sort of look, Jenko's gonna go. Ospina's on the verge of leaving. There's 6, and that's not really getting involved in the main of the squad that needs to go. Mustafi, Nacho, Koz, Xhaka, El Nene, Mkhitaryan, Ozil. There's another 7, so that's 13 really that could do with going if we're, and then you could maybe add Kolasinac. There's 14. That's a big heft of players that have, for me, got to go. Like I say, whether we like it or not, the realism is, can we get rid of them all in a window? I doubt it, because I don't think there's a ton of suitors for a lot of what we've got. It's all good and well as all saying, well, this guy's shit and he keeps letting us down, let's get rid of him. But the downside to that is, if we feel like that, well, other clubs are looking at him like that and going, well, why are we going to pay market value for this guy? We're not. So there's going to have to be sacrificial lambs for the slaughter for me, and we're going to have to take a hit on certain players just to get rid and start again, and press the reset button, Control Alt Delete sort of thing. And we've got a real nucleus there to build from. I looked at it as well, homegrown quota. With Welbs, Rambo, and Jenko going. Wiltshire in the last window. And then you look at sort of what's stepping back into the club that's already here. Well, Martinez counts, Chambers counts. Bielik, I think, counts. Reece, Eddie, Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe. There's nearly our homegrown quota. And then you add Iwobi. We're not bad on that front. But that does involve integrating all these guys into the squad. Because I don't see us going out and buying any homegrown players. I don't. So it's real tricky with where the squad hangs at the minute. And I think some of you have to realistically realign your goals now. It's like I pointed out the other day. People are still piping on about players like Zaha, Peps, and you've got to step away from that, guys, because it's not realistic. We're going to have to build. We're not going to be able to buy. We're going to have to build our own success. We don't have any real. I looked into it the other day and I mentioned it to somebody. Look at the players we actually want rid of. Xhaka's probably the one that brings in the most money, and I'd be amazed if we got anything more than 30 million for him. Kolasinac, Mustafi, Mickey, Mesut. I don't see us getting more than 20 million for any of those guys. I'm sorry, and a lot of you aren't going to like what I'm saying, but it's not an opinion, guys. I think it's a pretty strong fact that we're going to struggle to shift a lot of these, and we're going to have to accept that this is hopefully the last time we just take a hit and we wipe the board and we go again. And then we build value in players. So I know a lot of you have been underwhelmed with the names we're getting mentioned with, but I for one am really excited about it. And like I say, I would love for us to bring in at goalkeeper I think we're pretty sorted, but right back I'd love to see a Max Aarons come in, a young up and coming, cheap, again homegrown player that could really press on in the next 3 to 5 years, become a real established footballer, and have some real big value to him. He could easily be a 30-50 million pound wing back. Centre back, Bielik, I see him coming back and doing a bit. For a lot of you guys, you see him as a centre defensive mid. I personally see him as a centre back, because I think his qualities that he has, would suit us a lot better there, because I think we need a lot of legs in the middle of the park and we don't have any, and I don't really see him adding that. But I think at centre back he relies less on pace and engine and more on what he does have, which is size, bulk, strength and quality passing abilities. So I could see him slotting in there. But then you look at sort of left back, people want rid of both of those. So I'd love to see a sort of Alaba come in, if we're going to be unrealistic. At centre back I'd love to see De Ligt and Upamecano come in. Middle of the park, I'd like to see Ndombele come in. Wingers, I'd love to see Pep come in. That's the sort of 5 players I'd look to start for the base model. But it's guys, it's not FIFA, it's not Champ Manager. So you've got to bring the level down. And it was comedy. I saw it the other day. Somebody talking about we shouldn't be looking at these players from teams like Saint Etienne and the likes of lesser level clubs. That's where we should be looking, guys. That you're looking at it completely upside down. Somebody's saying we should be buying from PSGs and Barcelonas. No, because they've already established those players. We need to start establishing our own. Because if we're going out and buying £70 million players, for me, the only way their value is likely to go is down rather than up. We need to be buying players. Look at Guendouzi, look at Torreira, look at Leno. Recent signings. You could even probably go as far as Aubameyang and Lacazette. We should really be getting more for those players and what we paid for them. And that's a good, an encouraging sign of looking at the way we're going as a club and how we're going to build our own value and build up our own nest egg that we can then spend, if any of these decide to leave, to help move the club forward. Aubameyang's been a big talking issue about it. People, you're fucking mad to want to sell him. It's not about want, guys. It's about doing what's right for the club. I don't want to sell Aubameyang, not in a million years. But he's not going to be at the club for 5 years. We might do well to get 2 to 3 years out of him. So if in this window somebody comes at us with a ridiculous offer, it is best to let him go. I do feel like his 31 goals could be found from other sources. Maybe Eddie can step in as a backup to Laka and score 10. If we get some wingers, maybe Reece can chip in with 5 to 10. Maybe Saka could chip in with 5 to 10. Maybe Iwobi steps on again next year and scores 5 to 10. There is ways of being more of a sum of the parts rather than just 2 spearheads. And it's a big part of where I feel like Unai went a bit wrong last year. Our lack of width with the top 3 and our lack of natural wingers led him to play Ober out there. That didn't quite work. People didn't like it. But our best football was played with 1 centre forward. So maybe, do we need both of them? And then who do you sacrifice? For me, it would have to be Ober, just going purely off age. I don't think he's that much better than Laka. He's a few years older. And maybe you do have to get rid of him to get in another sort of Eddie and then 2 wingers. It's a tricky one, guys, but I do feel that, I compared it to Liverpool, and you say, well, they've just got a left back from Hull, they've got a kid come through the academy at right back, they've got some players from Southampton. People would say, well, looking at it, they go, well, this team will finish bottom half of the table. Well, actually, because they've given these players time to thrive and given them a chance, and moulded their own stars, they've pushed probably one of the best Premier League teams there's ever been very close in the league, and they've been in 2 Champions League finals in a row and won one of them. And it's the same when I put up a bit of a projected squad with what we'd have left. And people looked at it and went, this team finishes bottom half of the table. What's that based on, that opinion? It's based on paper. It's not based on fact. It's not based on any foundation for it, because you've never seen that team play. So why would you bag on it so badly so quickly when it's filled with Arsenal players and young, exciting Arsenal players? Why would you not just go, well, optimistically, I think this team could finish sort of 10th to 6th. And for me, maybe that would be enough next year to then build on it, to go forward. Like I say, it's a tricky one for me, because I think maybe next season just has to be a reset. And we just draw a line under it and go, a bit like this year, it's just a restart of this year again, and we just go, well, top 4 would be lovely, a nice Europa League run would be lovely, but what we really need to worry about is this squad moulding, gelling, integrating some youth, integrating some young new signings, and then the next season we go, right, this has to then happen. We have to land top 4. We have to go deep in the Europa League or win it. But Champions League is the only acceptable outcome at the end of that season. And like I say, we just sort of lose a year in between in next season. So it's a tricky one for me, guys. It's really up in the air. So let's get on to transfers, sort of ins and outs. And we're getting to silly season. Now, full well that the transfer window is in full swing. And the madness is already kicked in when somebody's cousin, monkey's uncle's auntie's goldfish steps up and says, Inter Milan are going to buy Granit Xhaka for 55 million. Oh dear, I mean, I had to chuckle. Yeah, okay. And so many of you bought into it. I tweeted about it and went, yes, and I did the old Ace Ventura, yes. But guys, do I actually believe that's true? No. And what a lot of you just saw 55 million, Inter Milan, Xhaka, and got excited. What you didn't actually do is read that tweet, even though it was bullshit. That we want 55 million. It didn't say Inter had agreed to pay 55 million. We could want 55 million for him. We're never getting it. People need to rein it back in. The only encouraging thing is these nice rumours about him going. Some of you I'm sure are upset about that. But I've told so many of you, that are Sentiment FC fans, why would you keep supporting somebody that never repays your faith? And I had to chuckle a couple of guys that, I'm really friendly with that are big Xhaka supporters. And then you go and watch him give that assist. Just Xhaka being Xhaka for Switzerland. And I just had to message my mate straight away and go, captain material? Really? This guy's, somebody says to me, well, he's been captain of Gladbach, he's been captain of Switzerland. Look at the quality in that Switzerland side. Who'd you pick over him as a captain? It's the same as people that say, well, we missed something without him in our team. But look at who we can replace him with at the moment. It's through lack of options, guys, not because he's so brilliant. Some of you need to really get in the real world. And when I texted my mate about it straight away, and he just went, fuck off. You're right, brilliant. 800 smug points to you. Does it make you feel better that you're now making me feel like a knob for supporting the guy? And it's like, no, but it's time to be realistic about so many of these players, senior pros in this squad, that just aren't good enough. Cos for me, brilliant servant, just not good enough. Mustafi, he's been all right at times, just not good enough. Nacho, Kolasinac now is becoming another one, just not good enough. And these are all our senior pros, guys. Senior pros that it's easier to pick the ones that are good enough. Hector, Leno, Torreira, Laka, Aubameyang. That says everything about the mess our squad's in, guys. We've got 5 senior pros that actually deserve to stay at the club. And I just had to chuckle. It was just so Xhaka-like. And obviously the fluffed pass that he just gave it straight away was great. But then the big thing for me is, you continue watching that clip. Do you ever see him back in the screen again? Busting a gut to win it back? No. Why? Because he just doesn't have the legs, guys, and that is my biggest issue with him, is his lack of mobility. It's worryingly enough that he can only knock the ball around under zero pressure. And then you look at his positional, his mentality. I don't think he's got no fight. I think he's got no way of putting it down on the pitch where it's useful. He can be passionate. He can tell the players, go over and applaud the fans after the Europa. That doesn't mean he's a good player. I can do that, and you don't have to pay me 60, 70, 80 grand a week or continue watching me play shit football. I'll just make the players do that as they come towards the tunnel. All I need is an ID for that, and I'll do it for free. That's no reason to go, this guy should stay. And some of you that say this guy's a potential captain, I'm going to get down that route, but laughable. And this rumour, guys, big fat zero. I think Italy would suit him. I don't think he's a terrible player, but he's an average one. At a push, you could probably convince me into he's just slightly better than average, but he's average. It's some degree of average. But I think his game would be suited to Italy, where you've got all day to nudge it around. I could see that being a decent place for him to go. So maybe there might be some interest, but do I think they're going to pay 55 million for him? Not in a million years. And I'd be delighted if we could just get something near or taking a slight hit on what we paid for him. I think 25 to 35 million's realistic, and we just take a bit of a hit, we wipe him off the slate, and we start again, and we're getting a much better player. Although I'm excited to see his name getting bandied around as someone leaving, I don't give any credit to that rumour. And what fair play to the guy that made up that he was his cousin and came out and got his rod out, and he was just he's flinging him into the back of his boat every 30 seconds, if not more. So many of you bite so quick, and you've just got to sort of learn to laugh at this stuff. Another one, Saeed. he's one for me that I'd have definitely kept him as a backup. But these, I'm not ignorant enough to not look at fans and what other fans want. And I'd have kept him, and I don't think we're going to bring the 2 left backs in this window. So out of the 2, he's one I would keep. But then if you get there's no value in Monreal, and he's out of contract at the end of next year. So maybe he is the easiest one to write off and just use him as a backup for next season. And if we can get 20 or 30 million for Kolasinac, which I doubt, but if we could realistically get 15 to 20 million for him, and that buys us a Kieran Tierney or most of the fee for a Kieran Tierney, do we do that? Well, yeah, I'm not against that, guys. Do I believe Barca are going to pay us 30 million euros for him? No, no, not at all. And would he go there to be back up to Jordi Alba, because he's not displacing him anytime soon? It's an odd rumour for me, a real odd one. Could be some legs in it, but I'm not buying it for the time being. So they're the outs, really. There's not been any other news apart from Ospina, but that's it's hardly anything to get excited about. I think we're going to get a couple of million. But for me, he's another one that's a sort of slight bonus, because it's mainly for me just getting rid of a player that's never going to be part of first team setup. No point in having him, and we're paying him big wages. He must be on the best part of 100 grand a week. So it's more about just getting rid. Then we get into the really silly stuff, the ins. My favourite one so far is Buffon, bringing in Buffon. Come on, guys. I mean, do you really believe that? A seriously ageing goalkeeper, a seriously declining goalkeeper, and although I agree he'd be a great person to have in and around, he's been one of the greatest ever, he'd be a great influence to have in and around the changing room, he would still command, I'm sure, a couple of 100 grand a week wages, and I do not see us doing so much work in getting rid of players, letting your Welbecks, your Ramseys go, to then piss it all away on an extremely expensive backup goalkeeper, because we wouldn't be looking to displace him for Leno. And I don't like the implications that I'd have on Martinez. So, for me, I'm just too big of a Martinez fan to take my Martinez hat off and believe we're going to go and buy a goalkeeper that wouldn't be third choice, not second. So I'm going to completely discredit, on my own maybe misguided beliefs, I'm going to completely discredit any goalkeeper rumours. Meunier, that one's gone cold. I told you guys I don't really have any belief in that there's any real truth in this. I think it's maybe come from them to try and drum up some interest in getting rid of him. I could see Man United being much more interested in a player like that than us. So I think this one will just go completely cold, guys. I'm not convinced at all. I think we could do much clever business than that. And it doesn't align with any of the other business we're looking to do either, so I just don't buy it, guys. I'm sorry. I've had a little bit of a chat with somebody who does have some in at the club. Obviously I'm not going to name names, but I do get bits of information from him, and he's always on the money. And he's told me, in brief, that we've sort of got 15 names we're pushing around, and that's the group of players that we're looking at bringing in. I'm not saying we're looking at bringing in 15 players, but that's the pool of players that we're going to whittle down our signings. And like I say, if you look at sort of what's already gone out, Cech, Ospina, Lichy, Jenko to go, then possibly Mustafi or Koz or both. Possibly Nacho, possibly Kolasinac, maybe both. Xhaka maybe, El Neni I think is definitely going, and then you've sort of got your two troublesome ones in Mickey and Mesut. There's a lot there that could leave, and 5 players that already have. And I think we're going to mix it between, we're going to bring back some youth and players that have been out on loan, and then so I sort of see 5 coming into the setup from the club internally, and then 5 coming externally. So I think obviously Martinez as number 2 goalkeeper. I see Bellic being part of the squad. I'd like to see it at centre back rather than centre mid, because I feel his qualities suiting better there. Chambers is a perfect replacement for El Neni. He's better than El Neni. He's younger than El Neni. He's more versatile than El Neni. He's just come off the back of a great season. He's homegrown quota. He's on a long contract, so we're not in risk of anything. Where we could build some residual value in him. It amazes me people want rid of him, but there you go. And then you've sort of got Willock, who I think, been watching him again in the youth teams, internationally. He's got to get a chance for me. He's a ready-made replacement for Ramsey for me. I love the way he's always seems to get in the box at the right time. I've noticed that for anybody he plays for in any system. He seems to have that. He reads a game really well. I could see him, people are going to laugh at the names, but I could see him being sort of our Lampard, that sort of our Drogba style sort of player that just, he arrives on the edge of the box, helps with build up and then arrives at the right time. And then you look at Emile, maybe he's going to go out on loan again, but he's someone who I feel might get integrated. Eddie, I think he's going to get a lot more game time next year or be loaned out. Reece, I think, is going to get game time next year. So these are the sort of young players, I think either Amici or Saka might get some game time. So there's sort of 5, 6, 7 names of players that we've already got at the club that we can integrate into the team. Then you sort of look externally. The next rumour, Anderson and Pryor, I think this one's going to happen, guys. Like I say, for my mate, he seems to think there's 15 names running around. These are 2 of them. But the most interesting thing I garnered from what he was saying is that we're not going to get stuck on specific targets anymore. We're going to scout a sort of pool of players. So we might want one winger, but we're going to look at 5 wingers. And we'll go at our first most prime target. If that doesn't happen, or a club says, well, seeing as Arsenal are interested, we want 60 million instead of 40, we're just going to go, right, forget about it, who's the next one, and just move down that line. And that's not saying that the quality of the signing will get worse. We will have already done our due diligence, and it's just who we'll prefer. Like I say, I don't think it'll be like going Mbappe, Dembele, Fraser, Moreno. I don't think it'll be that sort of drastic scale down. So, talking about these 2 guys, I've told you guys in my latest video that Anderson's a player I've watched quite a lot of. He'd be a really brilliant signing. Pryor, I'm not so sure about, although I do think he's a really good blend of Xhaka and Ramsey. He'd offer us a bit of what both do, but in one player rather than 2. Having that link already with Torreira sat at the base of a midfield with then somebody maybe in front of them, or we go 4-4-2 and just them at the base and 2 wingers. I much prefer that idea than another season of Xhaka and Torreira, I really do. And I feel like it's Xhaka that lets down Torreira, not the other way around. So that deal, around £50 million mark, if that is accurate, that is some fabulous business, because they are 2 players that, at 23 and 25, still young enough, we could have for 2 or 3 years, still not in the prime, and where if they didn't quite work out, we could easily get double what we've paid for them. So I really like this style of business, and I give this rumour massive credence. I think this could be possibly our first 2 signings of this window, and in 2 real key positions, and it doesn't blow a lot of the budget. Next one, Saliba. He's another one, God, I think if we can go from sort of Mustafi and Koscielny to Anderson and Saliba in one window, woohoo! I am happy with that. And it's one of those where at their ages, I wouldn't see it being brilliant instantly, but if we gave it 2 years, I think that could give us definitely a part of a title challenging centre back partnership. Sort of those 2, Socrates, Holding, and then you've either got a Bielik or a Mavropanos of the 5th member. I really love the idea of this. We're talking around the sort of 20 to 25 million mark, which I do think's a bit expensive for him. But when you think about it and you look at him and you watch the type of player he is and you look at his age and you think it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Because I do not see him being another one that if we have him for sort of 3 to 5 years, we wouldn't recoup our money if things really didn't go well. And he could turn out to be a bit of a worldie. And that's the thing I like about all of these players that I'm looking at. The ones that I give real credit to the rumours, I think could turn out to be... Pryor, maybe not, but I think he could be very good level. Very good. Whereas Anderson and Saliba, I think, could go right to the top. From watching them, and I'm not basing this on YouTube, guys. I'm basing this off. I watch it's part of my job. I watch a lot of football, live and through TV. So I've seen both of these guys play quite a bit, and I think they'd both be fabulous additions. And really go a long way with, rather than papering over cracks. Like I keep saying to you guys, putting plasters on broken limbs. This week's be part of. You look at that then, like I say, Bielik, Holding, Mavropanos, Saliba, Anderson. That's 5 centre-backs all under the age of 24. that could take us a long way, guys, and I'm all for this rebuild of the club. Left back Moreno, God, just come on. I mean, the stuff that was getting peddled was from October from the start. I mean, some of you just read it and you don't actually look at when the article was published. You know, you don't look at any sort of with any rhyme or reason before you blow your lid. Why would we get rid of Kolasinac to replace him with Kolasinac? You know, I said the same when somebody mentioned Daniel Sturridge the other day. Why would you get rid of Danny Welbeck to get a more injury-prone Danny Welbeck? You know, madness, guys. You just start using a bit of common sense. But then, you know, I saw a little bit of murmurings about Turney, and I thought, because for me, money-wise and quality-wise, he'd be a great replacement, or just a first-choice left-back for us, whether he replaces the other two or not. You know, I'm not saying they both leave, but if one leaves, then he's a cracking replacement. And another one, you know, he's at a brilliant age. And like I say, you look at sort of what our back line could look like next year. God, it's night and day from what we're looking at the moment. And it's players that I would be much more willing to give time and patience towards than what we're watching currently. You know, senior pros on big wages relentlessly letting us down and making mistakes and just not looking up to it. So he's one that I hope the rumour mill just gets stirred up a little bit more for him, and we keep hearing his name more frequently. Wingers, yeah, Fraser, it's gone cold on that one, and I think for good reason. I raised it the other day with somebody. No discredit to Ryan Fraser, because I think he's had a breakout season this year, and I think he's done really well in, you know, a pretty moderate team. But if you dig a little bit deeper into the way he creates chances and what he actually does, I think it'd send out a really bad signal to the players that we've got, the really good youth ones, if we brought in a player like him. It's not about instantly improving the first team. I think he'd be an improvement, but not enough of one to sacrifice the possibility of then putting Saka, Amici, Nelson's noses out of joint. And then, you know, if you're one of them kids, like I said to somebody the other day, and Ryan Fraser comes in, what does that say to you? You know, that, you know, being 19 and you're looking and going, you know, I am on the cusp of the first team. Ryan Fraser comes in and you go, you know, and you're looking at Sancho, you know, and you're thinking, it's time for me to leave. You know, as much as I love this club, they've got no faith in me. And that's where I think, like, a lot of you guys aren't willing to accept. This window, I think, is where we have to start having faith in some young players and completely restarting. You know, and it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be brilliant every week. And I'm sure there's going to be weeks where you're going to want to tear your hair out. But I think in the long run, we'll come out on top, and it'll be well worth the heartbreak. Whereas at the moment, we're going through heartbreak and we're not progressive. So some of you guys that don't like the idea of it, what are you getting now? What are you enjoying? What you're seeing now? I know I'd much prefer watching these guys, and I'd much more enjoy watching these guys and giving them a chance than keep giving a chance to what I'm watching at the moment. So I'm not a big fan of a Fraser rumour, and I hope that does stay cold and one we just distance ourselves from. Carrasco is one that suddenly resurfaced itself. You know, I'm guessing he's got bored in China now. He's made his bit of dough over there, built his little nest egg, and he wants to get back to competitive football. For me, he's a big upgrade on what we've got. He's a way better player than Fraser for me. And someone then I look at, well, then if we do go, you know, free up top, and it's either Laka or Oba down the middle, but then you've got sort of Reece on one side, Carrasco on the other, or he goes back to sort of the two top front men, one being pushed out wide, and it's sort of a fluent front three that just all sort of interchanges. Now, for me, Aubameyang would be the middle one of that three. I thought it was better this season, Aubameyang being out on the side and Laka being down the middle. Whereas now I've watched the season unfold, I think Laka would be better on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, and Aubameyang straight down the middle, because Laka gets involved in build-up play a lot more, and Aubameyang's just got that more poacher instinct about him. So a front three like that just sort of moves around, I'd be all for, and then we'd have the young lads as backup and, you know, taking the pressure off them a little bit. You know, he's come out with this talk of that he's an English club he's talking to. I'm not sure that's us, guys. Just doesn't really seem to add up to me, the substance of what he's saying. But it could be us. But I think he's one that we'd have to pay good money for. I don't see us getting him on the cheap. You know, there was talk that they already are looking to recoup what they've laid out because of that over 5 million tax rule over there in China. So it's going to be a tricky one, that. I'd be delighted if he came in, but I'm reserving judgment on that one for the minute. A few other cheeky ones, striker rumours. Moussa Dembele from Lyon, CSK striker Fedor Chalov. Both young, exciting strikers, and maybe this does signal that we're if the right offer comes in, we'd be willing to get rid of Levlaka and Auburn. Like I say, I'm not totally against it if that helps us as a squad progress. I'm a real big fan of Eddie. He's another one in the Willett bracket for me, that he's too good for a youth football. He's got to be given a chance, and I think taking the hit last season where he accepted that the club needed him just to be a third choice striker, and he did it. He didn't kick off, he just took it on the chin. We've got to give him some respect back this year. Very similar to Ainsley for me. He deserves to go where he wants to play. And Eddie, I think, is versatile in that sort of front three to play any part of it, as a winger or as a striker. So I think we've got to really give him some game time this year to prove himself, because if we don't do that, what's the point in having him? Let him go and play his football elsewhere. That's similar to my comments with Martinez. He's too good to be third choice. Give him a chance, or see him out the door and show him some respect for his loyalty. So I'm not against these rumours, and if we got rid of Aubameyang and we got 80 plus million for him, and then we had Lacazette and a Chalov or a Dembele behind with Eddie, I'd be more than happy with that. And then freeing up some money to replace players in other positions. Claude Maurice, I think we're hot on the trail of this lad, I really do. For the money, I think he's another one that we could add to that mix. So future going forward, wingers we'd have sort of Reece, Saka, Amici and Claude Maurice. Again, that's a lot like the defence. That's the sort of wingers, if they all turned out to be as good as they look like they might, could see us through the next 5 to 10 years. And if they ever again did want to leave, we'd have 30, 40, 50 million plus players because of the age and the progression they'd be making. So it's all about that sort of build for me. Two midfielders that I'm really interested in. I'd love to have seen both of them come in, but with the Sampdoria Prayet deal, I don't see both coming in. But Sangare and Palacios have both talked like we've been interested in them. So they're two on the list. I think that if this deal with Sampdoria doesn't happen, then these are two we'd instantly look at instead of Prayet, or maybe one plus Prayet. It's just really exciting, guys. I don't know how people aren't excited about this, but it's the first one that I'm genuinely really excited about in ages, because I think it's the way the model of the club and the way we're being built now is going to work, is that we're going to, like I say, polish our own diamonds rather than attempting to go out and buy them. It sort of started, we saw it with Guendouzi last year, and Torreira. Torreira is much more established, but we're looking at a £50 million player in him already. If we wanted to get rid of him tomorrow, we've built residual value already. Guendouzi, whether you like him, think he's brilliant or not, think he needs a lot more time, he's worth a hell of a lot more than the £7 million he paid for him. So when you're instantly writing off these young lads that we've got at the club and ones we're looking to sign, look at previous history, in our recent history, at ones we've brought in and whether we're doing well. You look at the senior pros we've been relying on. Ramzo's gone for nothing. Ozil will probably go for nothing. Mkhitaryan will be a small fee. Xhaka, like I say, probably won't be what we paid for him. Mustafi won't be what we paid for him. And then you look at this new model of these young players, we're going to get more than what we paid for them all. So what's your problem? Even if they don't work out, at least we're making money where we can then reinvest it into the squad again to get players that do work out. I'm all for this way of moving forward, guys. I'm really excited at these names. And I think if we could sort of, like I say, you look at out, I know I've gone on about it a few times, but goalkeeper, so you look at, check out Ospina out, just Martinez in, and you let Iliev be number 3 or one of the youth goalkeepers. Great. Frees up a lot of wages, and we're just as good in my opinion. We've not got any weaker. Right back, I'd love to see Aarons come in as backup to Hector and move Ainsley to the middle of the park. We could probably get him in for sort of 10 to 20 million. And I'm sure he'd be more than happy to be a backup player. It just muddies the waters a little bit that Norwich have now, made it to the Prem, so he'll probably look and go, well, I can be a first choice starter at Norwich or a backup at Arsenal. So maybe he is unrealistic now. It's a tricky one, that one. But he's what I'd like to see, that type of player, a backup to Hector, and somebody 20 or below, because Hector's still young. Centre back, if we're looking to bring in an Anderson, a Saliba, a Hermoso, any of those young players, any two of those, and Kolasinac and Koscielny and Mustafi going out, I'm more than delighted with, because we're still keeping one old Edin Socrates. Left back, whichever one of those two goes, I don't see both going. Whichever one goes, don't really care anymore. Attorney coming in. So there you go, just in that back line. Cech, Ospina, Jenko, Lichi, Koz, Mustafi, Nacho or Kolasinac out, in, Martinez, an Aarons, a Saliba, an Anderson, and then you've got Bielik coming back, and then a Turner. So you're sort of splitting it then a bit. It's in club, and that's where the main of our our exterior resources are going to be spent, I think, in defence. Then you look at the midfield, and I want to see Xhaka and El Neni gone. And then you look at what our midfield is, so then we could have sort of a Prayet or a Sangare or a Palacios. And then you've got Torreira, Guendouzi, Willock, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Emile Smith-Rowe. Maybe he will be moved into a sort of a central attacking midfielder position, which is where I believe he needs to get moved to, or just move him on from the club because he ain't a winger. And then you look at the winger situation, which is really dire. Mickey's probably should go, and then that leaves us with no actual wingers. Welb's gone, obviously. So then you're looking at that and thinking, well, Reece should be capable of stepping in, for some games. Saka, I'd love to see, and it's sort of split between Saka and Amici getting game time. So then you sort of need one or two senior, more senior established wingers, and that'd have to come from outside the club. So maybe a Claude Maurice and Carrasco, maybe, and they're sort of 30-40 million gone. And then up top, that's all dependent on those two leaving, and I don't see either of them leaving unless a monster offer comes in. So, like I say, I'm really optimistic, guys, about the future, and I think if we do what I think is going to happen, I think I'd be way more optimistic with that team, even knowing it'd finish 8th, going forward in the future, than continuing to watching what we've got now, knowing that I could only see us finishing 5th or 6th next year, 6th or 7th next year, and just continue on that steady decline. Because, like the comments around Xhaka this week, and he's talking about, well, he wants Champions League. Well, what does that say to you about a guy like, and these are the ones that people are telling me are captain material, really? You're a big part of why we ain't got Champions League, pal, and rather than help us achieve it, you'd walk away, fuck off, do one. So that's it for me, guys, talking all things transfer at the minute. I think there's loads of interesting stuff bounding round, but for the minute, I think it's interesting talk rather than any facts towards it. I do think we're very close to Anderson and Prayet. I think we probably are quite close to Saliba. The talk of them wanting him back on loan, I wouldn't want that to be the case at all. I don't think we're in a position where we could do that deal and spend sort of 20 million on somebody that we're going to loan back out. But, why wouldn't we look at the idea of then loaning out Mavropanos to them, or letting them have Bielik there for a year, and trying to progress them without... we're sacrificing it in our first team lineup. But then what does that say to those guys if a Saliba comes in and replaces them around a similar age or younger, and then they're getting pushed out, and then they go, well, what do my chances look like? This is what I mean, guys. There's a big job on at the minute. And I would not want to be Unai Emery. I really wouldn't. But I got a lot of faith in Rahul doing a very good job. And that's another thing my mate mentioned to me, is that anybody at the club has been massively impressed by this guy. You don't stay at Barcelona for a decade, looking after their transfer business through fluke. It's from having something about you, and I felt that in that second interview that this guy's really got something about him. He's very confident in his own ability, and I think while he's Daddy wants some sausages, pulling the strings in the background, I think we've got plenty of reasons to be really optimistic. I just think you should have to temper your enthusiasm next year, positional wise, and I think it's more about building a squad based on quality, real quality youth players. So that's it from me, guys. It's been a bit of a waffle, but there's been plenty to waffle on about, so I hope that's helped you thoughts and feelings towards signings. Once again, get in touch with me if there's anything you want me to talk about, or you want to take part in this. And please keep spreading the love, subbing, liking, commenting, and on Twitter, please start following. And retweeting and quoting my tweets if you enjoy the content, guys. Have a lovely weekend. I'm off to Park Life and Mr. Gallagher in the park up the road tonight. Get my old glow stick and whistles out. So good luck to you guys. Hope you have as much fun. I just hope that I'm not there in my wellies and my parka, and I'm there in my spandex undies and my Hirachis. Too old for that shit, guys. But take it easy. Sai signing out. Have a lovely weekend. Take care.